So I think that's pretty much it. And so then another cool thing is that this light is going to illuminate the ice mist that we have. So there's going to be a lot of light interaction and just interaction between all of these elements. So the final thing that we're going to do before we kick it off to render is we need to go through and we just need to set our mantra nodes up. And it's mostly taken care of for us. First, I'm going to make mantra. I'm going to do set geo. I'm going to go to objects. I'm going to say force objects. So I'm going to do set geo. And then what we need is, I don't think we need to matte anything. This is always going to be there and be on the bottom, but we need to phantom a lot of things. So we're going to phantom the ice cloud, the ice mist, the light geo, the water, the flames, and the dirt. So pretty much everything. And so what's going to happen is they're all going to cast shadows, they're going to cast light, or they're going to block light, which is shadows. But we have also our candidate lights that are going to be illuminating the set. So if we just go to, well, we'll just stick on this frame. So I'm going to save this here. And now we're going to go to set geo, going to hit render. Okay, so as this renders, we can just look and see that, okay, we've got light from that light geo that we have. We have the reflection of the ice in the bowl. We have light coming through the fake caustics that we have in our render. And yeah, so this is all reacting. We can see here that there's sort of a shadow from the water that's connecting to the side of it. So this looks like it is reacting as I would expect it to with all these other things that are in the scene that are not being rendered. That way we can pile stuff on top, and then in comp, if we need to change anything, we don't have to touch this set geo at all. We can just change the individual elements. So I think this is going to work. So set geo, good to go. We're going to go to rendering, pixel samples, I'm going to crank to 8. Allow motion blur, though I don't really think that there's any, like this thing isn't moving, but just in case, I'm also going to set this to physically based rendering. And rendering, shading. Since this doesn't have dielectrics on its shader, I think it should be fine with this remaining off. So we are good here. Not going to mess with the set geo anymore. So now test is just going to turn into our ice. So things that we need to do here. All right, so we have our ice cloud, we have ice, we have light geo. So now we need to deal with mattes. So our mattes are going to be our set geo and our water. And that should probably be it. Another thing that we want to do is we want to, well, let's just make sure that we have motion blur. And then this one, we do want enable absorption and nested dielectrics. Objects should be good. Sampling 6, we want this, we're just going to make everything 8. We're going to copy this. We're going to do mist. And so here we're just going to say ice mist. And then forced matte is going to be set geo, water, ice, ice cloud. The dirt won't exist, so we don't need to stencil that out or anything. And then the flames, that's going to be on top of it, so we don't need to hold this out with the flames. We want the flames to be held out and matted by the ice. So this should also be good to go. So now we're going to go to flame. Going to up the pixel samples to 8. Objects. So flames. Then what we want is for matte, we want set geo. We want the water won't exist, the ice will exist. So ice and ice cloud. The ice mist won't exist either. The light geo won't exist. But the dirt will show up inside of it, so we want that to be stenciled out of that. So with that, I think now the flames are good. Let's just make sure. So let's go to 1190 here. I'm going to save. We're going to go to flame. And we're going to render this out. It shouldn't take too long. Alright, so this should probably be good to go. This is when the flames are burning out. And then we can see our dirt is showing up inside of it. And then the dirt, if we go to objects, we're just going to make sure that it's dirt. It's being held out by the set geo. The ice won't exist in there. Nothing else exists except for the dirt, the flame, and the set geo. The dirt doesn't need to be held out by the flame. The flame needs to be held out by the dirt. So I think that should be it as well. So all of our elements should be in place now, except for, now that I think about it, little old water. So water, we're going to go to objects. We're going to say water. That's what we're rendering. Things to matte, set geo. And then we will need ice mist. And I think that should be that. Just making sure that this is all good to go. Another thing that I think, now that I think about it, before we kick this off. Actually, no, this should be good. I was thinking that we might need to add velocity to our water, but it should have it. Maybe it doesn't though. Just going to go here into the beginning, do auto update. So this should have velocity on it. There's a few things we're going to have to do real quick because we actually don't have, oh, okay, so we do have water here, sampling. We want velocity blur. We're going to go into magic. Going into manual real quick. So for our flip cache, this does have velocity. So where are we writing the water out? We're doing it here. And so VDB from particle, it looks like this does not transfer velocity to it, which is okay. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to do a trail. Actually, no, we don't need a trail. We're going to do an attrib transfer. I'm going to move this down. We're going to make sure V is here. Just want to make sure that velocity is on this. So I do see velocity there. So we can just transfer onto this surface our velocity. It's going to have to think about it a second. And now we do have velocity on here. If we view this, okay, so this has velocity, so now it will have motion blur. I'm going to write this water cache out again, which is going to take a little bit of time for me, no time for you, so I'll check back in a minute. But you will want to do this as well, so be sure to do it or your render won't look quite as good as it can. So check back in a minute. My sim's cached out with velocity. So now if we just go into manual, I'm going to inch it up a bit. Then we're going to go to the render view. Make sure that we're looking at water. Another thing I'm going to do, I've realized that since we're going to be layering ice on top of the water, I don't think we need to hold out the ice or the mist. So we're just going to do water, force matte, set geo. Everything else is going to layer on top. And since the mist is going to be held out by the water and the ice cloud, I think that should be fine. So when we put stuff on top of the water is going to disappear pretty quick anyways. I think that will all be better for comp. So for the mantra, just water, force matte, set geo. Now let's give this a render. Alright, so I'm going to stop this here. I can just already tell that there is motion blur happening, especially around the edges. So it's doing what we want, and we can see that the ice is starting to grow and that our light geo is, well, our geo light is shining light into our water, which is exactly what we want. So with that, our water is good to go. We'll just double check, make sure pixel samples, motion blur. I'm going to set ray samples down to 1. I must have changed that at some point. This is all good. Yep, that looks good. I'm going to set minimum ray down to 1 again. Mist is 1. I bet all of these are at 1. Or 3, I mean. Okay, I think everything is set and ready to go. There's one last thing that we need to do. And that is we are going to go to our scene view, and we need to set up a camera with a rotation, just something that moves around this whole thing, just to give us a good view of all the angles as this stuff plays out. So I'm going to create a camera. And I want to see just our ice, and I want it to be fully grown, so probably 1100. I'm going to come off a manual. So I'm going to look through this camera. It's going to be at origin. So we're going to lock this. We're going to come out, and we just want to make sure that everything we're looking at is in frame. And I think it'd be better to just start at an angle here. It'll just be more visually interesting. Let's start here. So I'm going to center this up best I can, and we'll be something like this. I think looks pretty good. Just gonna save. So the next thing that we need to do, I'm gonna move this camera over. We're gonna create a null. We're gonna plug this into the top of our camera, and then all we need to do is we're gonna go to frame 1001, and where it's rotate in the y-axis, we're gonna start this at 0, and then we want it, instead of doing a full 360, I think it'd be fine if we did a 270. So this will rotate all the way around, and I'm going to turn off the ice just so that we don't have to wait on anything. I'm going to disable all these in the viewport, or at least these geo and volume lights. I'm going to get out of manual. I just want to see the set geo, and I want to see how this moves. So I need to disable in geolight. If you have the viewer flag on, you'll still see the geo that's coming through it, but that looks probably good. This must be flame light. Okay. So let's just make sure that this doesn't move too fast ever. Should start to slow down towards the end. Yep, I think that will work. So now we can just go into here. We can select all of these. And where it says cam 1, we're going to choose cam 2. Just make sure that's cam 2, cam 2, cam 2. Okay. And then another thing, we will want to change all of these to frame range. And yep, to 1250. So with that, I'm going to kick these off. We're going to render. And when we check back, I'm going to have a nice little slap comp so we can see what all these elements look like on top of each other. And hopefully they look great. Fingers crossed. Let's do it.